This is what $500,000 can get you in Copenhagen, Denmark. Welcome to our apartment. I live here with my girlfriend who is filming and occasionally a few furballs. So this apartment is 61 square meters and has one bedroom. So coming into the apartment, this is the main entrance. We have a small little entryway just to put your shoes and your jackets. Then we have 100 doors here for the bathroom and here for the back staircase. But the apartment really opens up immediately, and you can see here we have some really nice details here with some exposed brick and an old wooden beam and from the old structure. So this apartment building was actually built in 1902, I think, and we are located now on the top floor, so the 5th floor, which also means, as the building itself is very old, that there is no elevator. So we have big quads in this home.
And butts.
So the apartment was like an old dry loft, which they then in the 1950s, I think, converted into an apartment. But let's start by checking out the kitchen, which is right behind you. So it's actually a pretty nice, decently sized kitchen here in such a small apartment. Of course, you got like these very slanted walls as we're on the top floor. And that does take away a bit of the space. Pretty hard to chop your vegetables over here. So the apartment was, I think, last renovated like in the 90s. And so the kitchen that it had when we moved in was really ugly. But instead of completely stripping the kitchen and putting in a new one, we just painted over the cabinets and replaced the handles, replaced the oven, replaced the dishwasher, and now it looks relatively new. Also replaced the countertop and the sink. So that was a great way for us to save a lot of money, and I mean, it looks all right. So the dining room and living room area is really nice and open and feels pretty big in a relatively small apartment. So it's basically just one big room, but it's kind of nicely sectioned off with this big couch, which is probably where we spend most of our time. On this side of the apartment though, the slanted walls are not as bad as on the other side. They start a little bit higher and they're not as steep, so it doesn't really feel like it impacts the size of the room. And the skylights on this side are really nice and brings in just a ton of light. So it's a really bright apartment and can also get very hot in the summer. Now, of course, since it's not a huge apartment, storage is always gonna be an issue. So this bench here is just a great storage option and also a great bed, it seems like. A perk of being on the 5th floor, the top floor here, and having these slanted walls is that we have just complete privacy. And there's not even the people on the other side here can look into our apartment. So that's kind of nice. Can run around in the undies. We do have perhaps a bit of a style confusion in this apartment with one side being very minimalist and clean, and then another side here being very messy and colorful. But I mean, it's like a process of upgrading and changing our style. And I mean, that just the TV is probably over 10 years old. Now, since the building is very old and the apartment was last renovated in the 90s, there's just a lot of weird quirks in this apartment. Like here we have 2 different types of flooring on each side here, and there is a little bit of a height difference as well. And there's also just a lot of weird places where things are just getting a bit old. But I mean, if the apartment was newly renovated and very nice, it would also have been a very different price point. But let's quickly head into the bathroom behind me, which is actually a pretty nice sized bathroom for an apartment in Copenhagen. Now, the price might seem a bit high for an old and pretty small apartment, but really the biggest factor on the price here is the location. But before we talk more about that, let's head into the bedroom. I mean, it's a decent bedroom. we got a pretty good sized bed. And again, with the storage, we have a lot of these drawers underneath the bed just to utilize the space. And then we have a big closet for all our clothes. We even have a desk which used to be a working desk, but now Sally has completely overtaken it. And again, in this room, the slanted walls can be a bit more limiting, and I think that's why I sleep on that side, and Sally, who is just a bit shorter, she sleeps on this side. But she does bump her head once in a while. So a weird fact about, well, Denmark, I guess, and how we talk about apartments is that this apartment we would actually call a 2-bedroom apartment or 2-room apartment, because we basically count the living room as a room. So that can be a bit confusing because there is only 1 bedroom, but we call it a 2-bedroom. Another great fact about this apartment is that it's really quiet here. We're like on a side street which is very quiet and has one-way traffic, and really only the residents will pass through the street. And on this side we have like a huge yard that we share with all the other buildings in this block. Of course, it also helps that we're on the top floor, so we have no noisy upstairs neighbors with kids running around. It gets really quiet here. And of course, another thing that helps with that is the neighborhood. So let's talk about that. The apartment is located in Frederiksberg, which is one of the more expensive areas in Copenhagen. And this particular neighborhood that we are in is also just really popular place to live. The metro is right next by. There's tons of nice restaurants, bars and cafes, and also a bunch of good schools, and facilities around here are great. So it is a very attractive neighborhood for people to live in, and this apartment is definitely on the more low end, so one of the more affordable apartments in this area. Copenhagen is a pretty expensive city to buy real estate in, and there's a big sentiment in Denmark that it's also too expensive here in Copenhagen. But perhaps if you compare it a bit to other capitals or major cities around in Europe, it's not that bad at all. The fact is, Copenhagen is not really getting any bigger, and more people want to come and live here. So inevitably, that's gonna drive the prices up, at least in the longer term. And though it might not be for everyone, I really love this apartment's charm. It has all the unique quirks, the slanted walls and the weird layout. For me, it's great that it's pretty unique. A lot of the new apartments being built in Copenhagen really all look the same. It just feels very copy-paste, a lot of those apartments. And I guess that does help save money in the construction. So we bought this apartment about 3 years ago now for just around $450,000 US. And realistically, right now it would be worth just about $500,000 US. And if you're interested in knowing how much we spent living here in this apartment, you can watch this video right here as I break down how much we pay for the loans and, well, basically all the other expenses we have living here in Copenhagen.